Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Tom and Lonnie Chat. I'm Dr. Tom Kerfs from Georgia Tech, coming to you from one of our operations over here at Georgia Tech. And let's see, I think my friend and colleague, the good Dr. Lonnie Love from Sandia National Laboratories, there he is. Dr. Love, how are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm going to make. So nobody calls me Dr. Love except Beth, but I'm going to make you start calling me Dr. Love, just so you have to keep.
Well, I feel very, very special, very special. For those of you who don't know, I guess it's okay to say that Lonnie's wife is Beth, just to clarify things. Although you might be a little embarrassed by that, that statement there. But anyways, I've been married for a long time, and I just talked to Lonnie the other day, and he remembered her birthday and everything, so he's not in the dog. Life is good. Anyway, let's see. Who else we got here? We got our friend Stephen.
We do.
Stephen LaMarca. Hey, how are you? Coming to us from AMT headquarters.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a great day. I think it's going to be 95 today. So we're still in the heat wave. That's been going on forever. But hey, at least it's pretty outside.
Well, there you go. There you go. No, I think it's great. Well, welcome on board. Good to see you again, Stephen.
Thank you.
And let's see. I think we might have a special guest coming on. And there she is, Bonnie Gertie. Hey,
Bonnie.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we are excited to have you on board. And so today we're going to talk. We're going to go a little bit back in history. Of course, as you know, we're gearing up for IMTS coming up in September. We're going to have a live show. Come by and see us on the live show. I think it was. I think our live show was on Tuesday. Is that correct? Let's see here. I'm just looking on my calendar here. I've got it Tuesday at 1 o'clock Central Time. So save the date. Come on by, say hello, meet all the fun individuals in the whole bit. I believe we're going to have everybody, including Cyber Kyle, who's not with us today, but he'll be on board as well. So, but we're
He's here in spirit.
He is. Oh, he's here in spirit, poking fun at my BlackBerry, which I don't have. But anyways, but Lonnie, so I think one of the things we wanted to do is sort of roll back the hands of time and talk a little bit about the Strati. So if there's anybody who can talk about that, it'll be you. And then we got Bonnie on board to talk about it. And we'll just, Steve and I will chime in as we go along. But tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and how it relates to IMTS.
Well, I'll probably start with Bonnie because it actually started before Oak Ridge. It really started with Bonnie and a few others. So Bonnie, why don't you give a little background on how it all got started?
So we work. AMT has the Emerging Technology Center, and that's at IMTS every other year. And we've had that since 2004, 2006. So we're always looking for some new and interesting ideas to have at the trade show, kind of our feature booth in the front of the hall. And in 2011, I saw Jay Rogers speak at the AMT annual meeting, and he was talking about his rally fighter, and they built it in 6 days. So IMTS is 6 days long. So I was like, hey, this would be an interesting idea to build a car on the show floor in 6 days. So that idea came to fruition. It all worked out. It was great. Everybody loved it. And from a trade show's perspective, building something on the trade show floor every day, something's different, is incredibly hard to do. Most trade shows aren't able to do that. So it was, for the trade show world, it was a big, big deal. So big success. We loved it. We had a great time. We had staff actually participate in it to build the car. It worked out well. So after that was over, I was talking to Jay, and he's like, how are we going to top this? And so he went away and we went away, and we got 2 years to think about this. So a few months later, we had a meeting, and he was like, I have a great idea. I've met some really interesting people, and they're working on additive manufacturing. And how would you think if we 3D printed a car on show site at IMTS? And we were like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you can't even, how would you do that? I mean, back in I think it was 2013 when he first mentioned it to us. I mean, additive was still, mostly just dental, and it wasn't doing something large like a vehicle. So we were like, that sounds amazing, but what does this really entail? And he says, well, I've met some people at Oak Ridge National Laboratories and they're working on it right now. And that's kind of where it started. And there's some other partners in there too. Cincinnati Incorporated is in there and Thermwood. But I feel like between Local Motors, Jay Rogers and Lonnie, and of course Cincinnati, like I feel like Oak Ridge made it happen, because then it was bringing Oak Ridge in, and then we've been working with them ever since, because you all always have good ideas. So we're like watered a little bit on that. But.
Yeah, it's really funny because we started, again, to put this in context, the Strati was in August of 2014.
Okay.
And in
September 2014.
Yeah, and we had just started kind of researching large scale composite printing. Lockheed Martin had been doing some work in it. And there was a guy, Slade Gardner at Lockheed, that really was the real thought leader on it, but he couldn't get any support. And so Lockheed came to us and said, hey, I'll never forget, they said, if you can help advance technology, get it commercialized and get some visibility, you guys can have it. We just aren't going to invest in it. And I was like, absolutely. Why not? Sounds like fun. And so we started working on it with some internal research dollars in 2013. And by about January 2014, we kind of had it to where it was working. It was a rough structure. It was this blue gantry we built, and we were buying these Hapco extruders and trying to figure it out. And one of my colleagues, Vlastimil Kunz, came up with probably one of the real breakthroughs. Was when we were printing just with regular ABS plastic, the parts would curl up. And Vlasta comes in, he goes, just put some carbon fiber in the material, it'll solve the problem. And literally in a couple of days, we were starting to print parts without any distortion. So that was the real breakthrough, but it was still really early in the development. And about in January of 2014, Rick Neff had come through with Cincinnati. He saw it. He's like, hey, we want to commercialize this. And then about a week later, Jay Rogers comes in and he's looking at it. And we're talking about tooling, printed tooling for the rally fighter. And he leaves. And as he's leaving, he goes, hey, do you think you could 3D print a car? And me being an idiot, just like, sure, why not? No big deal. Next thing I know, he calls up about 2 weeks later and he goes, hey, I've signed us up to print a car live in front of 120,000 people at IMTS. I said, when? and he goes, September. I was like, of what year? And he's like, this year. So that's like 9 months, 8 months. It's like, oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, we gotta get the team together. We gotta see what we can do. And so a colleague of mine, Craig Blue, and I hopped in a car and drove up to Cincinnati and met with Rick Neff. And we go into their showroom floor. I'll never forget this. And Rick goes up, and they had this huge gantry for laser cutting sheet metal. And they turn it on, and this thing is zipping around. And I just remember turning to Craig going, I want it. I get it. This is going to work. We don't have to build the whole dang thing. And this to me was really, it became a complete change in the way that I saw that we could advance technologies and do research. Number one, you got to have partners. You have to have, if it was just Sandia alone, we wouldn't have succeeded. And you have to have a real hard deadline. Basically saying we're gonna print this live in front of 120,000 people in 8 months, 9 months, when it was just a lab experiment at that point in time, was a real crisis. So we had to create this crisis, and it was amazing. And you also have to have diversity. I mentioned Vlasta. We had to have material scientists. We had, in terms of companies, Techmerc came in and really helped out with developing the materials for 3D printing. Cincinnati was awesome in terms of providing us a gantry system, one of their laser cutting machines where we were modifying it in real time. And then they were building the second one that actually went up to IMTS in parallel with us. But it was absolutely awesome. This having diversity, partnerships with industry, and then creating a crisis with IMTS. I guarantee you, we accelerated the technology by 5 years just through that 9 months of really stressing the system and moving really fast. It was a lot of fun.
I have some questions. I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I have some questions. First thing, just to clarify dates. So the Strati was printed at IMTS in 2014.
Yeah.
And you guys pulled that off essentially in less than a year.
Oh, yeah.
From opening your mouth and suggesting it to actually getting it rolling and happening.
Oh, yeah. No, it was insane.
I've still seen the videos before of Doug Woods riding shotgun in that thing while it's rolling around the show. Was IMTS 2014 also the same year that we built that some AMTs? I sadly wasn't here yet, so I didn't get to turn a wrench or anything. But was that also the same year that we built the Rally Fighter at the show?
No, Rally Fighter was 2012.
Oh,
IMTS
okay.
2012 was the Rally Fighter. So, which is why we got connected to Local Motors and Jay Rogers, which is then why we got connected to do the Strati project.
Yeah, okay. And that was really critical, because if you'd have just said it was Oak Ridge printing a car, it would have looked like something from the Flintstones, right? I mean, it would have been terrible. and if you'd just had Oak Ridge doing the printing, Oak Ridge and Local Motor, or Oak Ridge and Cincinnati, same thing. Local Motors was really critical in this. Every single one of us, if we hadn't had that whole team working together, it wouldn't have succeeded.
Oh yeah.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry. So when we were working with Local Motors for 2012, they have the like a collaboration area where designers come in and they submit designs for. At that point, it was the design of the IMTS Rally Fighter. This time for the Strati, it was actually a design for 3D printed car. So they put out a call to designers to come up with a design that could then be 3D printed. And that's why it's such a cool, unique looking car. I mean, I cannot remember the guy's name, but he's from Italy. And it's just this beautiful, a little bit of rough, a little bit of smooth, very unique looking vehicle. And that's what Lonnie said. I mean, it's beautiful because you had designers as well as, all the material scientists and everybody else to make it happen. But the beauty of the car is also an important piece of the puzzle too.
Agreed. That was a real gem of Local Motors, because why I miss them so much, and I'm so thankful that we still have our Rally Fighter and that I love ripping on it. But now that I know that some AMT staffers turned wrenches on it, I might drive it a little easier next time. But that being said, what was so cool about Local Motors and their design is they really took that traditional aspect of that. They were a coach builder. They took the traditional Italian coach builder, something they did these really exotic designs of that of like that of Pininfarina or trying to think of like Zagato. They really followed that kind of like Italian design language, but they implemented that modern manufacturing processes with additive and
Steve, think about this. So we talked about how we went from just the idea of the 3D printed car in January of 2014. I think they rolled out the 3D printed car challenge probably in March, and we had the design. Rick Neff, myself, and I can't remember who else. There were three of us that kind of did the. There were like 210 designs that we had to review, and they were all amazing. Yep. And so March we get we start the design challenge. It was like in July. We actually got we decided in June, got the first CAD model in July, and we're starting to try to print it in August. And then I told Bonnie we were failing like crazy. Cars cracking. We're trying to break it up into quadrants. We're modifying materials and processes. And the very first good print was on the showroom floor. We actually
that's right.
We made design changes on the extruder the week before, and I had a colleague, one of my engineers, Pete Lloyd, we actually got this new screw and put it in the machine because we were going at about 10 pounds an hour, and it was going to take all week to print this car out. And we'd made it, and we were having problems with the layer times. We discovered this is why I've really reshaped my thoughts on research. We were going to 10 pounds an hour, but the layer times were like taking an hour, and the part was cooling down. We started getting cracking, and Velocimil and a couple of other guys came in, and they started doing modeling and sim, and they were doing thermal imaging, and they came up with this nut, you got to go about 4 times faster. And so we then decided we would cut the car into quadrants and print each quadrant out individually and then assemble it. And so the second car we printed was just that. It was going to be in quadrants that we would then bolt together. And in parallel, we were working with I can't remember the guy's name. He was out of Youngstown. He was called the Screw Guru, and we had him redesign the screw, and thinking we would get about 20 pounds an hour, and we get it. I put it in the blue gantry, and we turn it on, and we're going at 40 pounds an hour. And I was like, oh my God, this might work. So we put it in the machine, the Cincinnati machine we had at the MDF the week before the show, and we're printing, and it was like, this is going to work. And so before we finished it, because we were running out of time, I stopped, we paused the print, pulled the screw. I gave it to Pete. Pete hopped on a plane Friday night. He's up in the Cobo Center on Saturday, or at McCormick on Saturday morning, installs it, calibrates it, and we start printing Sunday. That was the first time we had a really good print. I mean, it was like last second win. So,
but and I'll just chime in here because it had all the different designs and so forth. It is actually pretty cool going from the design to reality. Now, that being said, of course, there's a lot of engineering that went into that, as long as saying materials and getting the process right and so forth. By the way, I just did a little Google over here. If you just look up IMTS Strati, STRATI, printing a car, 2014, blah blah blah, you'll see all sorts of videos. You'll see our fearless leader, Doug Woods, driving off at it and so forth. But definitely go take a look at that. But yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where, I'll say you can't print anything, but if you know what you're doing, it's just like you can't machine anything, right? If you know what you're doing, you sort of put it together in the whole bit. But I think you do need somebody like a Lonnie Love in there, because I think, Lonnie, you're 100% correct. Without a crisis, right, you're not going to move forward. And Lonnie will bring a crisis to almost every project.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite moments was it was stressful. It was scary. And there was a lot of trust. I actually have a lot of admiration for the leadership at Oak Ridge, because, if we'd failed, it would have been a big black eye. I have a lot of admiration for AMT of being willing to say, okay, because there was no guarantee it was going to work. It was like the rally fighter. They'd already built a couple of rally fighters. So you had a good sense. We had never 3D printed a car. And one of my favorite moments was when it was all done. Somebody comes up to me, and somebody was interviewing me, and Tom knows this. I say stupid stuff, and I was exhausted. All of us were exhausted, and somebody comes up, but euphoric, just excited. And somebody said, "Well, how does it feel?" I was like, "I feel like I just had a baby, and I'm ready to get pregnant again." That was so much fun.
And there you go.
So I was like, and so I will tell you, like, the MDF is an amazing place, and we started it in 2011. But I would say that moment defined it. That moment defined the MDF, because it was, we're going to do the audacious. We're going to take risks. We're going to do things nobody else is willing to do. And we had a series of huge demonstrations like that. And I will tell you, I've told people that combination, that key, really, for me, the diversity, the partnerships, and the crisis, we were really exercising something in terms of innovation. And we really made up, I was like making up crises, but when COVID hit, that was a real crisis. And we really did some amazing things to help the American people during that period of time. So I credit, again, I go back and I credit that one demonstration as being really what got us prepared.
Yeah, I
So
think you
thank you.
called it like a moonshot, like, you know,
Yeah.
instead of a crisis, it's like a moonshot, a big goal, to to try something different. And for IMTS, the Emerging Technology Center, having it in the Emerging Technology Center is that was one of the parts where I was worried, you know, it's not going to work. And I mean, Lonnie mentioned, oh, we're going to print it in 4 parts. I mean, I'm getting this as it's going on. And I'm like, printing it in 4 parts and then you got to put it together. I'm like, how pretty is this car going to be? And I'm not just talking pretty, but I'm like, you know, you want it to look nice, and it is what it is. But we didn't have to do that, which was great. But like, it was like, you know, 3 days before the show started, and we didn't know, it just the unknown. It was a lot of stress on as much as Lonnie and the team and everybody else is for IMTS. And I was talking to my boss, Peter Eelman, and I go, Peter, what if it doesn't happen? And you go like, Bonnie, it's the Emerging Technology Center. He's like, that's what it's there for. He's like, it's okay. We tried something new and different. And so, which made me feel better, because I was trying to, like, I was relying on you all to make it happen. And then, you know, how does that look on me to be like, yeah, you know, they all approved it as well, but it's like, I've been trying to lead the team along the way. So, but I mean, it was an amazing time, and it was just really cool. And you're right with, there's a whole story that one of the guys wants to talk about how that changed the industry for large 3D printing, you know, BAM style, you know,
it's a real
testimonial
to how adaptive and resilient the people and the technology is in this industry. And in speaking to that, Lonnie, I know you've got another story about the percentage of carbon fiber in the material that went into the thread. Tell us that one. You have to get that one on record.
that one got a little stressful. So we've been working with Techmer, and what was interesting, again, this is like, it was serendipity, because the MDF was a really open facility, lots of companies coming in, and we're printing stuff out in 2013, and people are coming through all the time on tours. And there was a company that comes in, Techmer, and they actually have a factory for making pellets, injection molding pellets, literally 20 miles from the MDF. And they come in and they're like, we make this stuff. And I was like, awesome, because I need some of this stuff. And we found that kind of the secret was to have the right amount of carbon fiber in the material. We needed about 20% chopped carbon fiber for ABS to get the parts to print without them curling. You go below that, things start to go a little wonky. So we're at the show, and we start printing at like 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. And Alex Rossley calls me up. He was one of my engineers, and he's running the machine, and he goes, something's going wrong. I was like, what are you talking about? And I go in, and what ends up happening is the car is starting to curl on us. And I was like, this shouldn't be happening, you know? And so he's having to speed it up in the center and slow it down at the ends, and then speed it back up in terms of the flow rate. And we're sitting here and we're going, what the hell is going on? And we go back, and I was like, we look, and it's not Techmer, it's Sabic. And we're talking to some people, and Sabic was donating the material. Nothing against Sabic. There just hadn't been communicated that we needed 20% chopped carbon fiber, and it had 15% chopped carbon fiber. And somebody said, well, we got it for free. I was like, this is the most expensive plastic ever, because we're going to fail. But and so everybody was like, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, plow on. We'll just keep going. We gotta work our way through this. And we got up about a couple of inches, and the structure got stiff enough that it stopped curling. However, it just pushed the problem down the road, because Thermwood did an amazing job, because now the car wasn't really where it was supposed to be. And so they have this preform that's kind of warped, and they had to figure out. They were doing all the machining online. I mean, Tom, from a machining perspective, just imagine you have a part now that's not what it's supposed to be, and you're trying to machine critical surfaces, and they may not be there.
Well,
so it was tough.
Yeah, I mean, these are things, you know, you could talk about 3D printing and so forth, but I suspect a lot of people out in the audience have had a casting that's not been to spec, or, you know, so forth. Either something doesn't clean up, or you whack a tool really hard as you as you G0 into position. So, it's same type of thing. By the way, technical term for that warping is anybody?
Distortion, but
Oh, no, you're too technical, Doctor. Potato chipping, right? So,
potato chipping.
No way.
But but there was, again, it was like everybody was doing their job.
Yep.
Everybody was doing an amazing job, and Local Motors really did a fantastic job of integrating it all together and driving it around. And the other thing that was amazing, again, I think at that point in time, Stephen, the largest 3D printed parts, there was some blown powder DED systems that could make pretty good sized parts. Things are like 5 feet, 6 feet tall. But by and large, most 3D printed parts weighed anywhere from 5 pounds, the big ones, 10 pounds. This was 1,400 pounds. Most printers at that point in time were putting out material at a few cubic inches of material an hour. We're going at like 1,000. We're going by orders of magnitude. And it looked rough. But man,
and this is again, when you say 1,400 pounds, this is polymer. This is plastic.
That was polymer.
Yeah. So, it's a lot of material, and it's very cool. And now, and by the way, Lonnie, did they start up a few companies? How did the industry grow after this?
Oh my! That was the other one. It was just a magic week. IMTS is amazing because you have everybody from around the world coming in, and so we're printing this car, and first off, we've been working with Chuck George, and Chuck George was at Hapco at that point in time. He was like a sales rep, and we kept buying these extruders and breaking them, buying more and breaking them, trying to figure them out. And he didn't have any idea what we were doing. And so he comes and he sees the Cincinnati machine printing these big parts. He goes, "That's what you guys are doing? That's what you're using these?" Because it was a plastic welder. And so he spun out a company, Strange Press, that is making extruders for 3D printer companies. Thermwood. We had Thermwood there, and they were machining, and they come up. I can't remember Ken Sarjarnan. I can't remember his last name. Their president comes up, CEO comes up and goes, "I want to do this." It was like, "Sure, go ahead." So that's the 3 companies right there. And then we had this young couple of college kids come up, and they were like, "This is actually too big, but we really like the pellet fed idea." So they started a company called Cosign. And one of my favorite was Tino O'Donnell from Ingersoll came up, and he's like, "I want to make a big one." And so Ingersoll started making these massive machines. It was just, to me, it was that 1 week. And Techmer actually started a production line for 3D printed pellets, which didn't exist at that point in time. It's now standard. You see these pellet fed extruders for additive all over the place now. But at that point in time, it was the first. And nobody was doing it. And so that 1 week birthed the whole industry.
Well, the amazing thing, and I know we're going to run short on time here, but the amazing thing, so if you have 3D printers at home, they're going to come in the spool with the filament. And if you take a look at the cost, I mean, it's not that big of a deal to get a spool of filament and so forth. But take a look at I forget how big the spool is, 5 pounds, maybe 10 pounds. Think about what it would cost to buy 1,400 pounds worth of that stuff. And by the way, that little skinny thread that comes out. So what this did is it really allowed you to go to scale. So it's just across the board. That's just very cool. And by the way, it's really bringing in a lot of technologies that we didn't know about, plastic extrusion and so forth, but taking it to the next level, throw in some materials. What was it? 20%, not 15% fiber. And so you learn all about this stuff. Anyways,
that free material must have been quality stuff.
What's that?
The free material that was only 15% carbon fiber, 5% shy of the prescribed 20, must have been good stuff if it didn't curl on you.
Well, no, so it did curl, and we had to just wait until the part got stiff enough for it to stop curling. And this is one of the things that I said, because somebody said, "Well, it's only 5% less." It was like, no, it's 25% less carbon fiber in that material. It's a quarter of it.
Right, 15 to 20 is what that's exactly right. Again, not that it was bad, it was just different.
But it really did launch we started looking at all different types of reinforced materials. One of my favorite was bamboo. So, bamboo with PLA. When you would print the ABS with carbon fiber, it kind of had a stinky smell. But when you would print the PLA with bamboo, it smelled like cookies. It was like I'd go down to the iBay. There's like Brian Post is in there printing stuff. It was like, man, it smells good. I'm hungry.
Yeah, we're all running out to Dunkin' Donuts, getting some donuts after that. But what's really cool is when you put the carbon fiber in the polymer, it raises the price. So it is not cheap. But the bamboo, I mean, what Lonnie's talking about, basically throwing instead of carbon fiber, throwing sawdust.
Right.
And that can reduce the price by, by 20, 30%, depending on how much you put in there. And I got to tell you, those things, when you're printing with the bamboo in it, and then you machine that polymer down, I mean, it's almost like sort of Trex, or, it's very wood-like. One would say arborescent, right? So.
But anybody that's had to cut down bamboo in their backyard knows that you don't have to worry about strength, because that stuff is resilient.
Yeah. Exactly. And to Tom's point, like when you buy the filaments, you may be paying $15 a pound, $20 a pound for that material. When you go to the pellets, it's like ABS is like $1 a pound. So it's extremely cheap. And now, but when you add carbon fiber, it then goes up to about $5 a pound. If you can add other things that cost less than, exactly. And when you start, if you're making little things, it doesn't matter, right? The net cost is if you're willing to pay that much. But when you're printing something like Tom said, that's 1,000 pounds. Now you may say, well, but where are you going to be 3D printing cars? And I actually think Jay was way ahead. He was just too early. I still think his vision was brilliant of a car dealership that can make cars. That's wicked cool. And you can go, we could jam all day long on why I think that's a great idea. It was just an idea ahead of its time. But tooling is another venture. To 3D print composite tooling in a day, it costs thousands of dollars, is a game changer.
And again, I want to make sure. So tooling, a lot of people think about tooling that we're looking on, sort of metal tooling. But Lonnie's point is, look, composite tooling, for laying composites down, you can do it on a polymer and so forth. I mean, you got to have it strong enough and heat resistant enough. But if we're just doing composites, you can print that out, which gives you a lot of flexibility. And I think we all know that it's very expensive to make that tooling, but on the big 3D, printer and so forth, you can do it. Anyways, I see that we are close to our limit on the recording and so forth. But I do want to point out, look, come to IMTS. We'll be there Tuesday, and we'll look forward to seeing it. And you will see great new technologies. You'll even come up with an idea to start up a whole new company or a whole new market space, like happened with these large 3D printers. I mean, it's very exciting.
So, I'll tell you that Bonnie has asked, well, what could Sandia do? We're thinking about it. There's some, so I'm targeting 2026, us doing again something audacious, and it'll be really fun to hook up with Rick and the whole team and kind of ideate on what we can do.
Well, I want to see us print a 3D air taxi and then have Doug fly off in it and see if he's up for that.
I was just going to say
that might do his limit with flying off of something like that. Driving, he was like, I'm good with that.
We could put MC in it.
So. No, MC wouldn't do that either. Yeah.
We should do a flying saucer. We'll do a flying saucer.
Flying saucer. Oh, there you go. Yes. I do want to say that the Strati will be at IMTS. So it doesn't roll anymore, but it's going to be there, and you can come see it. So
come join us. Come join us in September.
Yep.
All right. Hey, everybody. Great seeing you. We will see everybody next month in September for IMTS 2024. Actually, 10 years. 10 years since the Strati was.
I know. And I didn't have hair then either.
Man, time flies like an arrow and fruit flies like a banana. So on that great note, we'll let you guys go.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Stay safe, everybody.